All right, what is up, Utah fans? This is Joseph back with the Utah Utes Football Digest. And today we're going to be taking a look at the Baylor team that Utah is playing on Saturday. It's going to be an early morning kickoff. It's going to be hot. Baylor's going to be looking to get revenge after an embarrassing loss. We did a deep dive breakdown on the two teams. But what we're going to talk about today is the actual players, the players on Baylor, how Utah matches up. So I'm excited to dive in. Let's talk about it. We'll break down some PFF grades, break down some stats. So I'm excited to check it out. Let's go ahead and dive in. Before we do, make sure you like the video. That'll help get it out to more Utah fans. Also, if you guys enjoy this type of video, please make sure you comment down below and let me know who on Baylor's team are you most worried about on either side of the ball. There's definitely going to be some good grades here as we break it down, but it'll be against what you'd imagine is at best average opponents. Even if Texas State is well above where you predict, you'd imagine it's average. So I'd love to hear who you guys are worried about. And on that note, let's go ahead and dive in. Subscribe to the channel. We're going to be putting out Utah Utes football content all year. And if you want to be a part of it this season, I've got a bunch of great guys helping out. So let's go ahead and dive in and let's check out Baylor. All right, and before we break down these grades and the stats and all that, I do just want to be clear that, and I just hinted at it in the intro, but Baylor didn't play the greatest team. Now, Texas State could be better than a lot of people thought they were going to be, but like I said, at best, they're probably an average team. Baylor actually has some good grades. There's a lot of bad grades here too, but there are some really good grades on the Baylor team. Um, you know, it, there's a good team here. Honestly, Baylor is not a team that we are just going to walk through. I think we're the better team, but Baylor is not terrible across the board. They have some decent players in the squad. Like I talked about in some of the breakdown videos, Baylor won the Big 12 championship 2 years ago. Like they're not some crap team, and they were a decent team last year. So as we break this down, just take all of that into account. Um, so let's go ahead and dive in. We'll break it all down. Okay, and here is the Baylor quarterback room. So notice Blake Shapen is one of the highest graded quarterbacks in all of college football right now. To be fair, the quarterback on the other side, and TJ Finley, is also graded as one of the highest graded quarterbacks in all of college football right now. So I think that game just became a shootout, and that's just kind of how the game went. So I think both of their grades are a little inflated, but either way, we are not playing Blake Shapen. We're going to be playing Sawyer Robertson. And you take a look at Sawyer Robertson. He's got a decent pass grade. Can't run very well from what we're seeing here. He played 20 snaps, which isn't a huge sample size, but it's enough to get to know who you're playing. And he didn't look great. I would say he looked even a little worse than these grades might lead you to believe. And just talking about his stats, this Sawyer Robertson guy, let's go ahead and pull it up here. Boom. Sawyer Robertson. I don't believe they were very impressive. So let's take a look. So Sawyer Robertson, yeah, he went 6 for 12, so a 50% completion percentage with one INT. So not great there, right? And he ran 3 carries for 14 yards. So got a couple runs in. And when you think about that passing grade, guys, yeah, it was at the end of the game when Texas State knew they were going to pass. But at the same time, it's like, well, they were also probably playing off coverage and giving you some easy checkdowns, stuff like that. Maybe he was pressing to try to get him in the game, back in the game. Who knows? But that's the quarterback room. I think I'm kind of glad Blake Shapen's not playing. Obviously, you want to play a team at 100%, but he looks like he could be pretty damn good, where Sawyer Robertson looks pretty solid. So let's go ahead and take a look at the receiver room as well. Boom. Take a look here. So Big 12. Okay, Baylor. Okay, so let's take a look. All right. So their top 2 receivers graded out pretty good or pretty well. But again, that is against Texas State. Who knows how good these corners are? They could be terrible, right? It's really hard to get a read on that. This other corner or receiver did pretty bad right here, 52.3. Tough there. There's this other guy right here, Jonah Burton, who killed it. He only played 24 snaps, but extremely good grade. So we got to keep an eye on this receiving room. Let's take a look at what they did as far as their team goes. All right. So stat wise, let's see who was the stat leader out of this room. So for receiving, the number one receiver was actually not a receiver. I'm sure we'll talk about him in a second, but Jonah Burton was number two. He was the guy that I was just talking about, was killing it. On only 24 plays, he had 5 receptions for 88 yards, no touchdowns, but still 5 receptions for 88 yards on 24 plays. So 20% of the plays he's in, he's getting catches. Is pretty impressive. Presley came in second with 4 catches for 83 yards. And then Jackson Jr. came in third with 6 catches for 70 yards. So, like I said, this could be a pretty good receiver room. I think our corners might get tested a little bit. It's been something I've talked about a lot leading up to the season and after last week. So we have a good number one corner, a very good number one corner in Zamiah Vaughn. The question is the number two. It's it's a battle right now between Travis Broughton and Miles Battle. And the good thing is that against what's called Florida, they both looked good. They both graded out pretty well. And I thought Travis Broughton eye test wise looked pretty good. He had the one play where he let Ricky Pearsall get open over the top and Ricky dropped the ball. But I mean, Ricky Pearsall's pretty damn good. So is what it is there. I would just say we've got a pretty solid cornerback room and we're going to need it. They're all going to need to step up. I mean, if these PFF grades are, you know, even close to what they really are, again, this is Texas State they were playing against. But if this receiver room is as good as it shows, our corners are going to need to step up. Let's go ahead and take a look at their running backs next. Boom. Big 12, Baylor. So for running backs, really one guy was getting the majority of the carries, and Dominic Richardson. He's a big back, 6'1", 206. He had a 68.3 grade, which is not great. And decent, good running, 71.4. Terrible pass blocker, where Reese had 5 pass blocking snaps and looked good. So, not the greatest running back room in the world, especially with our defense that looks good. I'm not too concerned about any of those running backs. So that was the quarterback, wide receivers, and running backs for Baylor. All right, guys, and we're going to move on to the guys in the trenches. We'll start with the tight ends. So the tight ends, we're going to start with Drake Dabney, and believe it or not, this was actually the guy that led Baylor in receiving yards in the Texas State game. So this guy went 6 catches for 101 yards and 2 touchdowns. And you can tell here by an above-average receiving grade, he seems pretty legit. Not much of a blocker. He's got a decent overall grade, but struggles in pass blocking mightily. It's only 1 pass block snap, so who knows what that is there. But on 21 run blocking snaps, he's below average. They have a tight end room there's no terrible tight ends. They've got a good little roster here of below average tight ends. So I would say Dabney could be a threat, but again, it's not a crazy grade and it's against pretty lower end talent. So I'm not too stressed there, but I think our linebackers covering him or our safeties covering him is going to be a much different story. I mean, we could put a lot of different guys on them. Okay. This is where it starts to get fun. This is where I noticed they have some pretty bad grades when I was just kind of skimming through things. Their offensive line's got some struggles here. So Clark Barrington, a 52.7 grade. I believe that's the kid from BYU that transferred over here. These are both pretty bad grades in pass block and run block. He's not miserable at either one, but pretty bad. Like, you're not going to want to be going against RD tackles with those type of grades. So that's going to be a spot to watch, pressure up the middle against the center when we're playing them. And again, don't forget, these are grades against freaking Texas State. I mean, you're not exactly talking about a stud defensive line. And you guys can say whatever you want about Texas State. And like I've disclaimed many times to get the video going, they could be an average team. They might not be a bad team, but I think that's where Texas State, their ceiling is average to above average. So that's how we have to treat this. And I'd say when we look at these grades, let's consider it not a terrible Texas State team because they did look good, but let's call them, average to below average. That's probably where they wind up with the ceiling of above average. So that's how I'd look at this. And again, you see these grades here against Texas State, a well below average grade for Gavin Byers. He's a decent run blocker, but pretty rough in the pass block. Caden Siriaki, pretty rough in both with a 49.2 grade. I mean, you guys think about that. Our D tackle situation is going to go in there and eat them alive. This is going to be where the game is won for Utah. I can already tell. We're gonna get pressure up the gut from blitzes, from 4-man fronts, and just get in there and eat them up, dude. That O-line is not going to be able to handle this D-line that comes at them. And I feel confident in saying that. I'm not worried at all about them. Let's go ahead and see how their tackles are. Oh my gosh, Tate Williams, 81 offensive snaps, a 36.2 grade, a 45 pass block grade, 42.4 run block grade. That's really bad. That's really bad. That's like concerning level bad. And then Campbell Barrington, I think that's the other kid from BYU, 54.7 offensive grade. Pretty rough there. Right here, he's a decent run blocker, a little below average, but not terrible. And then, pretty bad pass blocker. Well below average, borderline bad. So he's probably like their best offensive lineman outside of that guard. So pretty rough offensive line. And as I keep saying, guys, like some of our guys didn't grade out well against Florida, but that was against Florida with tons of high-end talent. Like it's a respectable team to not grade well against, where these guys are going up against Texas State and not grading well. That's not a respectable team to not grade well against. So that's the offensive line. I do want to say one thing is that Texas State is or Baylor might be switching some guys in and out. I mean, these are rough grades. I wouldn't be surprised to see Baylor shake it up a little and give some other guys a shot. I mean, that offensive line play last weekend was so bad that you got to imagine that they're going to want to give some other guys some opportunities. So that was the offensive line and tight ends for Baylor. All right, now we're going to move on to the Baylor defense. So take a look here. This is a really unique thing. I don't think I've ever seen this. So this is their cornerback room. This is what's called a snap minimum. So it ignores guys that played really low snap numbers. And this is the only guy that was playing a good amount of snaps in Tevin Williams III. Now, he did grade out pretty well. Again, it's against Texas State. I do think Texas State looked pretty decent, but let's go ahead and turn off the snap minimum. And so outside of him, I'd say this guy is probably going to be their other guy that's actually out there playing quite a bit, in Isaiah Dunson. And he got an above average grade against Texas State. A few of these guys struggled pretty mightily. Caden Jenkins on 24 snaps looked pretty good. You really don't know. Such a small sample size against such a low end team. So really tough to take anything out of that. All right, now we move on to the safety room for Baylor. So you take a look here. Devin Lemire is the guy that is out for Baylor. He is the guy people have been talking about that won't be playing. He graded very poorly when he played them, 53.4. Last year over the season, a 76.2 in Big 12 play. That's pretty damn good. So I'd say we luck out a little with that guy not playing. Neither one of these two seems anything to be too worried about. They all kind of seem average. A couple good run defenders in here, but in coverage, they're pretty rough. I wouldn't be shocked to see Witt and Andy Ludwig take advantage of that, just like we did against Florida, taking that shot over the top right at the beginning. That looks like a group that could be exposed on defense. You know what's funny is I feel like safety gets so undervalued compared to corner, but it's wild how many talented teams have a bad safety group. All right, and then linebacker, this guy Josh White is grading pretty dang well, but it's only on 13 snaps, so it's tough to know how legit that is, how real that is. And he had average to above average grades the past 2 years, but very good grade on, but it was just on 13 snaps. Whereas some of these other guys had some pretty rough grades, right, against Texas State. So you got to be confident about that. Uh, just right out the gate, it's really similar to Florida, where it's a rough linebacker and a rough safety room that we can take advantage of. I think we'll be able to run against them. Let's go ahead and check out their defensive line, see how that's looking. Boom. I know they have one really good defensive lineman. So out of their guys that actually played a lot of snaps, it's below average to pretty damn rough. Like these two guys that actually played a combined 82 snaps, it's a pretty rough duo. This guy's below average, not terrible, but you probably not ideal that he's like one of your guys getting the most snaps on your D line. This guy, though, Devontae Tizino, 14 snaps, 87.2 grade, just ridiculous. So he could be a problem, but the rest of this defensive interior does not impress me much. And that's such a small sample size. You have no idea how legit that is. And this is his first year in college football. So I'm going to take that most of that is because of a small sample size. But if you do see number 59 hit the field, keep an eye on him. He could be pretty good. All right. All right, Baylor, they're edge rushers. So you got the one guy that got a lot of snaps, TJ Franklin, by far the worst grade in the room. And he got 55 snaps, by far the most. The other guy that got a good amount was this guy with 30 snaps, Kyler Jordan. Uh, Not too shabby, an average grade. And some of these other guys got decent grades, but it was really low snap numbers. None of them really impressed me. I think one thing I'll be looking forward to is to see how Spencer Fano does against some of these edge rushers, right? They held their own against Texas State, but if you're Spencer Fano, you want to bounce back this week and do much better than that. And don't forget, these one of these guys is going to have to go against freaking Setao Laumea, who graded out ridiculously well. None of these guys are going to be in his league. So that is the whole defensive room for Baylor. So that was the whole team right there. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that breakdown of Baylor's team. I would say one thing is when I was looking at the grades initially, I almost didn't really want to do a deep dive into the PFF grades just because I didn't like how high some of them were. It made me feel real disingenuous about what I was talking about, just because some of those grades are so high. But it was against Texas State. I just didn't want to freak anybody out. But as I dove through it more, outside of Blake Shapen with a really good grade and a few receivers that had really good grades on decent snap counts, it was a pretty bad team, right? Those PFF grades are pretty rough across the board. D lines, nothing special. Some decent edge rushers, pretty bad interior outside of one guy that looked amazing on less than 15 snaps. Like I said, offensive line's terrible. I mean, I think we're going to be fine. The linebackers and safeties are rough, and that's so many teams seem to have just exposable linebackers and safety, and Utah takes advantage of that so hard. I think we're going to run this ball hard on these guys, dude. I think their front seven is no match for ours, and we are going to have a field day out there. Seriously, that D line is not going to be ready, and I think our D line is about to eat, guys. This is a bold projection, but I'm going to say it now. I feel pretty good about this. I'm saying 5+ sacks in this game and probably in the 8+ hurries range. Like we're going to get back there and we're going to eat. They are going to have a bad night. And this new quarterback, Sawyer Robertson, is going to wish that he had picked a different school to transfer to. Outside of that, guys, make sure you guys like the video. Also, comment down below. What do you guys think of this Baylor roster? How do you think Utah matches up? I haven't broken down the Utah PFF grades as a whole too much, but I'm sure a lot of you guys keep up with it if you watch this channel because you're a football nerd like myself and you love Utah football. Also, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be putting out so much freaking Utah Utes football content all year that it's going to blow your head off, dude. So let's go ahead. We'll have a great year, dude. Should be another win this weekend against Baylor. Our front seven matches up super well on both sides. And I'm out of here. Go Utes.